Orders of the day, numbers 9 and 10.
Auditor Regulation Bill, Financial Reporting Amendment Bill, third reading.
The Honourable Hikia Parata.
I move that the Auditor Regulation Bill and the Financial Reporting Amendment Bill be now read a third time. Members should consider the Auditor Regulation Bill within the broader context of the Government's package of financial market reforms designed to restore investor confidence in our financial markets. Investors need to know that the practitioners charged with carrying out independent audits of financial statements prepared by banks, listed issuers and other entities that accept large amounts of money from the public are highly qualified, skilled and experienced. This is what the Auditor Regulation Bill seeks to do. The bill will reserve financial sector audits for the top members of the auditing profession within the major accounting firms. Following enactment, there will be a transitional period before the Auditor Regulation Bill comes into force. The New Zealand Institute of Chartered Accountants will need to establish new systems to carry out its new statutory responsibilities. The FMA will need to establish a system for monitoring and reporting on the adequacy and effectiveness of NZICA's regulatory systems and processes. The Registrar of Companies will need to establish a register of licensed auditors and registered auditing firms. I look forward to the FMA, the Registrar and NZICA working together to bring these much-needed reforms into place in a timely manner. I want to turn now to the Financial Reporting Amendment Bill. This bill provides for the reconstitution of the Accounting Standards Review Board, ASRB, as the External Reporting Board, or XRB, from 1 July 2011. It also provides for the consolidation of all financial reporting, auditing and assurance standards setting within the XRB. These responsibilities are currently split between NZICA and the ASRB, with NZICA holding most of the responsibilities. The changes are being made for two main reasons. First, placing the responsibilities within a single entity will make it easier to develop and implement coordinated strategies and programs. Second, it is essential for the setting of financial reporting standards to be seen to be independent of the interests of the profession as per international best practice. I would like to pay tribute to the ASRB and NZICA for their significant contributions to these reforms. I was pleased to be able to announce recently that all of the current members of the ASRB will become inaugural members of the XRB, along with 2 additional members. The ASRB has been working through the process of moving from a virtual entity that has no staff or premises to one that will have both. I also wish to thank NZICA for the thoroughly professional manner in which it has continued its standards-setting activities throughout the transition. To conclude, the passing of the Auditor Regulation Bill and Financial Reporting Amendment Bill will contribute to the strengthening of the financial reporting system in New Zealand and bring that system within the range of international norms. I commend these bills to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call Claire Curran.
You do. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to please to speak in the final reading of the Auditor Regulation Bill and Financial Reporting Bill. And I've spoken a number of times in the House on this particular issue, and there are several issues that are quite dear to my heart that I want to touch on. But firstly, the widespread collapse of major finance companies in New Zealand has badly eroded the confidence of investors in the financial sector, and I don't think any of us can disagree with that. And these 2 bills will go a long way to ensure that investors will have faith in the markets and that the businesses that they can invest in. And Labor does support these bills as it continues the work of the previous Labor government, and I want to put that on the record again. in improving the regulatory environment in the financial sector. And improving the regulatory environment in any sector is actually quite important, and we're seeing that being eroded across many sectors at the moment. It's also important to put on the record and remember that the Capital Market Development Task Force, which advised the government to create the new Financial Markets Authority, was established under the previous Labor government and was established by the previous Minister for Commerce, the Honourable Leanne Dalzell, and I'd like to put that on the record again as well. And it's a shame that the government has ignored the work of the officials on the establishment board for this authority, with only one of those officials being appointed to the current board of the Financial Markets Authority. This bill reconstitutes the Accounting Standards Review Board as the external reporting board, with this body setting all standards relating to financial reporting and assurance services. It also requires the Institute of Chartered Accountants to regulate auditors as a specialist profession rather than as a general chartered accountant, and that's in recognition that the role of auditors is crucial in ensuring confidence in financial markets and making sure that auditors are held to a high standard and have the skills to competently do their job. And it's essential that happens if we're going to avoid the disasters that struck the mums and dads and investors during the collapse of Hanover, Bridgecorp and numerous other finance companies. And further to that, the Financial Markets Authority will be given oversight of auditors to ensure they're capable of carrying out a large issuer audit. And self-regulation by the Institute of Chartered Accountants was found to be failing in this area, and by ensuring that we've got an independent regulatory body for auditors, we're bringing our regulation up to international standards. The FMA, the new Financial Markets Authority, which is a new and, as I've said several times in this House, an untested authority as yet, will be able to prescribe standards for the licensing of auditors, registration of audit firms and promote the principles around the quality and integrity of New Zealand auditors. And without that oversight, New Zealand auditors wouldn't have been able to practice in Australia, the European Union and other jurisdictions. So, to be clear, these bills will apply only to major audits, and it's important to acknowledge that, because those of large companies or issuers of securities, and it won't impact on the small or medium-sized companies or the non-profits. And I think there's been a little bit of misunderstanding around that during some of the discussion in the House, and it's important to put that on the record as well. And it's important because we don't want to increase the compliance costs for the small businesses in tough economic times, but we do want to make sure that those big businesses and those issuing securities are being honest and upfront with investors. Commerce Committee thoroughly scrutinised the bill. We believe the changes made will ensure a more effective and fair law. And it's a requirement that both individual auditors and firms will need to be licensed and registered respectively, which recognise that both the firm and the individual auditor needs to meet high quality auditing standards. Also, under the current Act, all partners of an audit firm would be liable for a breach of regulation, and that's been adjusted so that only partners who were aware and did not act to prevent the breach would be committing an offence. And there's been quite a lot of discussion about that during the committee stage, because that's a fair adjustment that avoids punishing innocent parties. There's no escaping that this is a complex and detailed bill, and I know my colleague, the Honourable David Parker, has talked about that several times, and that complexity comes at a cost to the auditors who faced compliance costs and to the average investor who's got to wade through reams of information simply to understand a basic balance sheet. This bill is about restoring confidence in financial markets and bringing them into line with international standards. I also want to touch on another important point that is lacking in this bill, and this also was raised in the committee stage of the House, and that is of financial literacy. While not ignoring the good work that this bill does in ensuring that important confidence in financial markets, it will be undermined if there isn't a strategy from the government to ensure that financial literacy is a priority for every New Zealander. I heard what was said during the committee stages, and we do need both sides of the transaction to be fully informed about that. And while apologies for not hearing the previous speaker, if that was mentioned, I would like to say that the important work that was done by the Capital Market Development Task Force that was set up under the previous government by the Honourable Leanne Dalzell identified financial literacy as a key issue, and there was a lot of work put in, Mr. Speaker, around this issue in the previous under the previous government, and that work has largely sat on the table and hasn't been enacted upon. And I just do want to touch on that because I think that it's been raised so many times in the House as being an issue that we're going backwards on, and that there has been a number of issues raised in a report that was produced by the Capital Markets Development Task Force, particularly on financial literacy, that could form an important part of the government strategy going forwards, which I would hope that they are actually going to do. And they identified that financial literacy was a key issue and that New Zealand's capital markets were small relative to the size of its economy when compared to other OECD economies, and while New Zealanders' savings practices, which included the limited extent of direct investment in capital market products, might suggest that New Zealanders had a limited understanding of these products. And the effectiveness of disclosure by issuers also depends in parts on investors' financial literacy. And the task force at that time was interested in looking at the current state of financial literacy in New Zealand and the ways that it could be improved. And one of the ways that it could have been improved, as it was identified at the time by that particular group that looked at it, was saying that financial literacy in schools could be promoted more strongly as part of the curriculum or made mandatory, and looked at a process of how they could make that happen. They also looked at financial education outside schools, which could be stepped up in a number of ways if additional funding was available, which was involved using more frequent marketing campaigns. And I think we've seen during the investigations that the Commerce Committee's done on this issue of the importance of this issue with the truth in advertising issue and the way that people in the community can be sucked in by prominent celebrity figures fronting for organisations that can turn out to be crooks. Also looking at a campaign that could be run purely on investing and how to invest properly. And I think that this is something that I would hope that the government would be looking at. And while Labor supports these bills, we know that there are many other issues that need to be addressed around them.
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. Her time has expired.
Government.
Ko paseta Sam Lutuinga.